So recently I went back to work at the job I had from December of last year to like late January of this year, and I only made it 2 days. Or was it three? It was like 2.5. I made it like 2.5 days because I could not sleep. And also because of other things that I won't get into, stressors that I was having in my family life. But primarily, it was sleep that was fucking me up. And I think it's fair to say that those other things that I'm not going to mention had an impact on that. But it's difficult for me to sleep when I am anticipating having to wake up at a certain time and do certain things. Like, even though the people at that job were genuinely better than the other people that I've had to work with, I kept running into the same problem where even just being around people at all caused these pervasive, difficult feelings in me. The feeling that something was wrong, that I shouldn't be there, almost like a overstimulating kind of feeling. Like there was so much external stimulus that my body and mind couldn't handle it. Especially when I had to be in a room with 3, 4, 5 people, I'd find myself aimlessly looking around like confused and trying to force like a difficult smile on my face in order to look normal, and then I just ended up looking really awkward, and then I would end up saying things that were really awkward. Of course, no one would care, because no one actually cares at the end of the day, which is something that will help you when you realize that. Like, the reason I could even be in that situation in the first place was because I knew that any awkward or weird thing that I did was going to be forgotten by everybody there. It wasn't going to be brought up. People weren't going to take it seriously. And when you realize that, it helps you a lot to go out into the world and to do things. But the actually being there part in the first place is what's difficult. Because I found myself consistently feeling trapped. Like the walls were closing in on me because I had to perform socially. Even though I was being quiet most of the time and wasn't pressured to speak per se, there are inevitably times when someone asks you something or wants you to chime in or tries to get you to chime in and you have to say things, and that was very difficult for me because I didn't want to interact with anyone there. Like, I wanted to be at a job where I cleaned stuff so that I wouldn't have to talk to people, not to be engaged by people all day, which is ultimately what was happening. It was really difficult. Like, there was one particular moment where I was in the stocking room, right? The room where you get all of your towels to load on your cart, because this was a hotel again. The only jobs I've ever worked are hotels. And I had to get all my stuff, and the woman who was right next to me said that she needed to get some of the same item, and I said, yeah, you know, it looks like they just about raided this place. I extended my hand outwardly to grab the little towels that I needed, and then I just stopped in my tracks when I realized she needed them too. I was like thinking about it for a moment. Like, I was acting like a guy who has to think about their next move when they're playing tic-tac-toe. Like, it seemed like I was just stopped in my tracks in the most retarded way possible. And she just like kind of looked at me and she was like, get you some. And I was like, oh yeah, and I snapped out of it and got my stuff. It was like consistently weird stuff like that, like little awkward things that don't entirely make sense upon reflection. Just like this pervasive sense that I was very uncomfortable where I was. And I think other people notice that. It's happened to me every single time that I've had a job. Like, I've been so uncomfortable being there, and everyone around me seems to kind of notice that I don't feel okay being there. And it's a really bad feeling because I'm aware of it too. I'm aware that other people are aware of it, which just kind of makes it worse. And there's something so physical about it. There's something so physical, especially when you're in a room with not just one person, but 2, 3, 4, and you're feeling the fact that they're all there, like you can feel that they're all with you in the same place. It's so uncomfortable. It feels like there's knots inside my stomach that are forming and twisting around themselves and twisting around themselves again until I'm just tied up in this terrible knot. It's a bad feeling. It's a really, really bad feeling. And it makes me feel like I'm at a loss for words both when it's happening and when I'm trying to describe it, because I don't think words can do justice to that kind of feeling. You know, having people want you to look them in the eye and then your eyes go in whatever direction is the opposite direction every time because you try to look them in the eye, and it's like this unsteady feeling because it's so physically uncomfortable to look at them. The person that I am most consistently able to make eye contact with, my wife, even her I have trouble making eye contact with. If you've seen the videos that I've done with her where we do discussions on various topics, it's like I still do that thing where I'll look away more than half the time because it's so difficult for me to just maintain that eye contact. It's like physically it feels so bad. It feels like I'm being physically hurt when I have to do that with someone. And it's these little quirks in the interactions, these awkward traits that I have that have been so debilitating for me. And I've tried to go out into the world and get various jobs and get more experience with people because I recognize that you can't just hide away. But it seems like every time I try to do that, and every time I do that, I end up facing the same facts, which is that I'm very physically awkward. I'm very socially awkward. And I don't know how much experience it's going to take to remedy something like that. Because as of now, at least, it feels like it's just a part of who I am. And I don't know if this is because of autism. Like, I hear stories of plenty of autistic people who claim that they've been cured, at least functionally speaking. Like, they've done so much therapy and exposure therapy, as it's sometimes called, that they've been able to kind of train themselves into being able to function in normal society. I don't know if those people are just particularly high functioning and they have particularly high IQs or what, but I don't know if I'm able to do that. I question whether or not I'm able to do that. And it feels like that's what society requires of me, unless I am to find a career where there is not so much social interaction. Like, ideally, I would just be doing something where I can be alone. And I think that would help my sleep because I wouldn't be anticipating having to interact with other people. But moreover, a problem that I face is the schedules themselves, because my entire life, as I've elucidated and illustrated on this channel in great detail, my entire life has been marred with sleep problems. Like, this has been consistently very difficult for me. And because of that, when I was in school, I could not go to sleep and wake up at the same time. And I would end up sleeping in the class or going multiple days without any sleep whatsoever because I just couldn't get my brain there. And when I was homeschooled, which was for the majority of my life prior to going to school for a few years and then, of course, dropping out, it didn't matter what time I woke up and fell asleep. Like, my parents would just adapt to wherever I was at, and I ended up enjoying better sleep as a result. Of course, the world outside does not work that way, and I faced problems when I had to rapidly adapt to those systems. But it was the same problem when I was homeschooled. I could not wake up and sleep at the same time every day. Every day it was a new sleep schedule. It would shift. The longest period of time that I've been able to maintain one has been like, what, 2 weeks? And then it's flipped. It's something in my body. I don't know if I have a sleep disorder. They haven't really been able to make any conclusions, any great conclusions, these various doctors that I've gone to. I don't know what the problem is. They don't seem to know what the problem is. But whatever it is, it causes me to shift by anywhere from a couple hours to an entirely new sleep cycle at random times. These days it seems to be every couple of days I have a rapidly new sleep schedule, which can't possibly be healthy, but it's at least comfortable if I don't have to work. Of course, if I am working, there is this situation where I have to be up at a certain time, so I'll go in without sleep, and I won't consume caffeine because I know that if I were to consume caffeine to alleviate some of my fatigue, it'll make my sleep quality and my sleep problems even worse. So I was coming into work without any help whatsoever from like coffee or anything like that, just tired as shit and working. And I'd come in at the last time that I was working there, prior to this time, I would come in sometimes with 2-3 days without sleep and like not remembering some basic steps about my job, not noticing certain details that I needed to remember. And so it was an arduous experience at various points. And I don't know what the solution is going to be for this, because I've tried every sleep medication in the book, and the ones that are narcotic, obviously you can't take your whole life, because there's a whole range of cognitive problems that stem from that, not to mention addiction and tolerance. And with the ones that are non-narcotic, they just plain don't work with me, because I had taken them for so many years when I was a teenager that no matter how long I don't take them, when I try to take them again, they don't do anything. At least that's my assumption as to why they don't work anymore. Many of them just never even worked in the first place, and it seems like I'm just kind of fucked when it comes to sleep. Like, I think the anxiety thing I can work on. I don't necessarily know if the discomfort around other people is a thing that I can work on, because it feels so physical. It doesn't even feel mental a lot of the time. But I would hope that those things I could work on. But the sleep thing, and I know they tie in together. Ideally, if I work on one of them, the sleep thing will be easier. But like, as I said, even when I am not facing those problems, this sleep thing is a problem. So how do I fix that? You know, that's sort of the difficult thing for me to navigate and figure out. That's what I want to find a solution for, because until I do that, it's going to be very difficult for me to do the things that I need to do. In terms of working, unless I can find work that doesn't necessarily make me adhere to these kinds of rigid schedules. And in the past, like when I was a teenager, this was why I was so interested in doing the YouTube stuff full time, for example. There was a time on this channel in like 2016, 2017, when I was really practicing at honing in my speaking abilities, getting better at writing, getting better at editing, all these things I wanted to do because I thought that if I became proficient in these areas, I would be able to do YouTube as a job, and that would save me from a life of poverty and destitution caused by my sleep problems and social problems. That was how I was looking at it, because I thought, well, there's no hope for me. That was the way I was looking at it growing up, which is pretty grim of an outlook to have at such a young age. But I thought, there's no hope for me. It's over. The only way to get through this is to either get on disability or become a professional YouTuber. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a professional YouTuber. And as I did YouTube for longer, I realized I really don't like making the kind of content that people want to see and that will drive clicks and views and bring money into my bank account. And so I ended up just doing whatever the fuck I wanted to do and hoping that people would watch it in the process, but not really caring if they didn't. And that's where I'm at now. That's where I've been for like a long time on this here channel. And it's kind of a bizarre situation because I do recognize that this is one of the only theoretical avenues by which even that I can make money, but I'm not even doing that. So I don't know. Like, I really don't know what I'm gonna do here. I think that I will work again once I'm at least on some of these medications again. I will be hoping, God willing, that these medications make it a little bit easier to sleep. And then if I get just a couple hours in, or just a couple more hours in, it should be enough for me to just power through brute force and work. And then I can get the money that I need to actually file the paperwork with immigration to keep Sophia here legally. And regardless of other mental health factors that I have, such as psychosis or autism or anxiety or depression, I want to kind of just push those things aside and not really worry about them and just brute force, like force myself to do it in order to get that paperwork done. Because if it weren't for that, like, I wouldn't be trying to do this stuff anyway. I mean, I'd try to do it in the short term in order to get like a new graphics card or something like that. But I wouldn't be trying to do this stuff consistently if not for the fact that I need to do it in order to have her consistently live with me instead of just, on and off whenever the short-term visa runs out. And so that's a huge motivator for me. And it's necessary that we do that unless we went to like a third country where we could both stay for like a long time, that's relatively cheap, which is also something that's on the table, to be fair. But ideally I would just make it to where she could come here and stay here instead of just going back and forth, staying for 6 months and then going back, staying for another 6 months and then going back, or me going there for, a certain amount of time and then her coming back. We've been doing that for years now. It's too much, it's expensive. We're married, we're meant to live with each other. And so in order for that to happen, I need to get all this sorted out. And it's not going to get sorted out by me doing the same things that I've been doing forever. Like, I need to take new and innovative approaches which I would hope, me and my doctor can work on. It's just very slow. Like, I've been seeing doctors about this stuff since I was an adolescent, and look where I am right now. I'm facing a lot of the same problems, but I have the willingness to change, and I want to change. It's just a matter of like figuring out how to get there, which is where I'm really struggling. And God willing, I'll get there and I'll meet my goals and things are going to be better. But it's a complicated tapestry that I'm navigating here, because when naturally your sleep is disturbed, and also it's disturbed by these other factors that can more easily be changed but are still very difficult to change, such as social anxiety, such as difficulty being around others, and so on. That's going to be difficult to navigate because there's so many different factors inhibiting one's ability to sleep. And so we'll see what happens with all this, but that was basically my experience at that job. Like, I was very socially awkward. Some days I really was not, and I did, people laughed at my jokes, and I did a good job engaging, but the social awkwardness would always like come in and out. Like, it was always ebbing and flowing and kind of a factor. And it's a difficult thing for me. It's also a difficult thing for me to get that consistent sleep that I need. And so these two things together really do hinder my ability to function. But I hope that there are solutions on the horizon, be it finding a different type of career that doesn't have such a rigid schedule, or perhaps ameliorating some of the anxieties that I have about being around other people, becoming more smooth and charismatic on the fly even, or perhaps finding the right cocktail of medications, even though I've tried them all essentially, that can get me just a couple hours, and then finding it within myself to just push through, even though I haven't had enough sleep. It's all kinds of things, really, but it's necessary. Whatever I end up needing to do, it's necessary, as long as it isn't something leaning on something illicit, because I absolutely do not want to do that, or not even illicit, but just like the legal things that you can get, that are drugs. You don't want to do that either. Stuff that isn't prescribed by a doctor, because that is going to cause a lot of problems too, cognitively and emotionally, and I stay away from that stuff. So I don't know. Like I said, it is a complicated tapestry that I'm trying to navigate here, but I believe that I can do it. I believe that it's possible. And if it's not possible, I have to try anyway, because it's the only way to get this done. If it's not possible, I know that she'll be with me anyway, and I know that she'll stay with me. Even if, we have to live in more difficult circumstances with just me having my disability, I know that she'll be there with me. But in order for us to live a more comfortable life, and to do it through all the legal processes, I have to get this done. So that's the situation as it follows right now.